And we're live with today's pre-show of our 220-1101 Core 1A Plus study group. Got a lot going on. Look at all this we got happening here. I've been working on making sure that everything is set up, and I believe we are in good shape. We got about 10 minutes before we get started. We'll start at the top of the hour, 12 noon my time. In the meantime, you can always head over and install the Vevox app and I wonder if we can, you could probably even do it from here. You can QR, I don't know if that's really even necessary. Head over to Vevox.app and we can use ID 113718997. That's the ID for today. I guess I could even put this up. There we go. Hi, everybody. Hi, we're doing some last minute checks here. There's the Vevox app, ID 113718997. That is today's, or just go to professormesser.com/QA. I guess I could put that up. That would work. What else we got going on here? We got, oh wait, where's my laptop? There it is. Now we got, very nice. Everything's working just like we like it. Hey, chat room. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. We've got all new questions from the Core 1 coming up in this first hour. In the second hour, I will open up the chat. Well, I guess the chat is already open. So you could even go to Vevox and leave questions in Vevox right now if you wanted to. Let's see if that's really open. Yes, it is. Can submit questions at any time during the presentation, during the live stream. So that makes it easy. One of these days, maybe next month, we'll make it so that you can submit it anytime before the live event. I'm working on that. There's a few extra things I need to do to make all of that happen. There's always something, right? There's always a little extra that needs to be done. And we will get that little extra done eventually. It always works there. Why can't you rewind the live stream? How are you supposed to go back in time? You know, I guess technically you can go back in time, but you'll need some type of method of doing that, like some type of technology, some type of fast car, those types of things. At least that's what I'm told is how that works. So we are live. You can't rewind because you can't go backwards. Now, if you would, there is an option when you configure the live stream whether you would like to allow that DVR functionality, but because we are doing Q&A, sometimes people will get behind. They'll not realize that they went backwards, and then they're behind the whole time, not being able to answer things properly. So we don't do that. We just go for all of this. So I'll put the link to Vevox.app, ID 113718997. There we go. That's a little better. And you can kind of see it. It's right here. Can't you? I guess you can't read that. It's so small. It's so tiny. How are you supposed to read that? It's on, I guess, or I could do this. There we go. Now you can read it, but I can't see anything on my side. Everything's just zoomed up. It doesn't work either. We'll come back off of that. What else we got going on? We've got, there's so much. First, it's the holiday season, right? So it's a little bit crazy to make that work the way we would expect. So we'll have to figure that out. Make all of those things work. Okay, we've got recordings are going. I just need to check and make sure that's going. We're, of course, streaming, so that's working. What else we got going on? That's really it for now. Except now that I'm live streaming, now's the time for people to hit the front door and, ring the doorbell, and it's okay. It's just a delivery. We're fine. I think the other piece in here is just making sure Q&A is up. It is. I think we're in good shape. I think we're in pretty good shape there. So now we just need to make all of these. The app forwards to the site. I don't know what that means. Maybe you could provide me with more details of what the app does when it is forwarding to a site. I don't know. 5-minute warning. Look at that. We got a lot going on. It's just going as very quickly here. It's just moving right along. Search of good times and pleasure. We're going to see if we can get these questions. Last time, I think my questions should have been harder. So I tried to make them a wee bit harder, a smidge more difficult. We're going to see if it comes through or not. It's not a competition. It's not like I'm trying to fool anyone. I just want to be sure the questions are really asking to do that. App says it wants you to use the webpage. It opens the Vevox webpage. I don't know. You got me, so use the Vevox webpage, I guess. Let's see if it works on mine. I'll pull up the Vevox on my mobile device. And do I even have the Vevox app installed? I do. And the session ID is 113718. I plan on making this much easier in the future as well. All these crazy app IDs. Join session. I join session. The Vevox app has moved. Use our new and improved web app. So that's why we have the wrong web app. We both have the wrong web app. So let's go to that's good, right? I heard nothing of a new web app that would cause everything to break. So that's good. And there is a Vevox app. It says open. So it's not, things are not looking good for any of us. There's only one app. I have it. But it says, no, there's a newer one. You should get the newer app. So for some reason, the Vevox app has moved. Let's do a screenshot so I can send that to my lovely folks on the Vevox side. So much for having an app. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I think what they're trying to do is get away from the app. I think they're trying, if you're going to run an app, you might as well just be on the web page. Wouldn't it be nice if the app and the web page all did the same thing? I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that's their idea. Given, I know they did an update for December, but there you go. We'll have to see what it works like. We got about 2.5 minutes to go, and we will get started here. We got a lot happening here. Oof. We got also, this is the core 1. We got the core 2 on Thursday. I've already written all those questions too. So everything for this week has already been created. It's in the can. We're good to go. Now we just have to wait for the 7th to get here to do the core 2. And then I've got to work on getting more of the content done for this month, because we've still got a Network Plus and a Security Plus study group for this month. Haven't written any of those yet, but that's coming. That'll give me something to do this week. Also got more Q&A to write. There's videos being edited. If you're not on our YouTube right now, you probably have seen there's just constant YouTube videos being posted right now. We're in this massive session of videos that are going up. So it works that way. We're in good shape here. I'm going to do one more check through. I think everything's working the way I would expect here. Everything looks good on the stream side. These are looking good. Did I release new Security Plus videos recently? Yeah, I guess in the last month we've released 85 of them. I guess 88 videos recently. So yeah, if you look at the last month, I would say yes. There have been a few new Security Plus videos recently. You want to have some tips for the 601? Well, be glad to talk about that on our, I guess we could even do it in the after show, but the 601 study group is later this month. That would be perfect to be able to do it. I wonder what the next steps will be for a lot of that security content. We'll have to see where things are going. Things always change whenever there's an update from these exams. There's always a lot of things that change. And I don't think a lot of people understand just how much changes between these different versions. It's very downplayed on the internet. In fact, I've even told some people, here's what's changed. They go, that's impossible. That can't possibly be what's changed. Like, oh yeah. Thankfully for A+, we're good. We aren't in the middle of change. We are rock solid. We have everything we need to make all of this happen. So I'm very happy about that part, if nothing else. Let's get a green light. Love the green light. We could probably be one more slide up. That looks good. And since it is the top of the hour, I think it is time to start a study group. Why don't we get things started, everybody? Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2023 Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1 A+ study group. This is our study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and you hopefully know the answer to some of these questions that we are asking. I have a lot of information here available for you. These are all brand new questions that you haven't seen before, so it'll be interesting to see how things go. If you would like to join us, I would love it if you could pop over to professormesser.com/QA in your browser. It will redirect you over to a page where you can participate with our Vevox app. There's also a Vevox.app that you can use. It will, at the moment, simply redirect you over to the web page. At least that's what it appears to be doing on my side. So even if you use the app, it will probably ask you to use the website anyway. So professormesser.com/QA is a great place to be able to see what's going on. And if you follow those instructions, then you will see that there will be a question waiting for you. Our first question, in fact, asks where you're joining from. We have quite a few people from North America, some folks out in the Caribbean, with folks in the EU and the UK. We've got quite a bit of folks around the world that are tuning in. So thanks so much for being here. We have a lot to go through today. I'm going to start, though, with what we call a rewind question. I guess I did tell you that all of the questions today will be new, except for the first one. The first question is one that I asked last month. And I usually go through this second, or at least this rewind question, so that you can see if you know the answers to the questions that we discussed. This is also a good opportunity to see if you can get into the Vevox front end so that you're able to see the information. And if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you that asks, a network administrator is adding an SPF record to a DNS server. Which of the following would be provided with this configuration? Now, of course, we don't answer in the chat room. We don't answer or have any hints in the chat room. Instead, we go to our Vevox app, where we can answer that it's either a version of the DNS config, a list of authorized mail servers, IPv6 address of an FQDN, digitally signed email addresses, or instructions on handling unauthorized emails. So there's quite a few options to choose from there. Hopefully you're able to see that in your Vevox.app, or you could easily pop open a new browser window and head over to professormesser.com/QA. We will go through this question and find out what the real answer is in just a moment. We'll come right back to that. In the meantime, I want to thank you for being here. We got a lot that we've been doing here behind the scenes. We're not here live. There's always something going on. And there's a lot of information happening right now on our YouTube channel. If you're interested in Security Plus, we've put out about 80 plus videos in the last month on Security Plus. You can find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. That's, of course, where our Network+ and A+ courses are. So it's a great place to be. We've also got our Twitter and Instagram. So if you want your daily A+ pop quiz question, you can find it either on the Twitter side or on Instagram. Eventually, I'll start calling Twitter X. In the meantime, it's kind of stuck in there. It's sort of like Joe Robbie Stadium. It's just always going to be that for me. So Twitter and Instagram is what that slash is going to be right now. And someday maybe someone will convince me to make a /X for this so that you can find it on a properly named branding of what formerly has been known to be the Twitter platform. This is a great place to get questions, though. If you need a question for A+, we have one there every workday. We also have an option to give you a webinar category CEU. All you have to do is listen in sometime during this first hour. It'll give you instructions and everything you need to know to earn that CEU. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you don't know what a CEU is, that's okay. Just don't worry about what a CEU happens to be. As soon as you earn your certification, these CEUs may be something that you accumulate to be able to renew your certification. If you aren't certified yet, then this really doesn't apply to you. We're going to talk about today the A+, specifically the Core 1 version of the A+. The A+ exams themselves consist of 2 separate exams. Those exams are numbered or versioned as the 2201101 and the 2201102. The release date for both of those was April 20th of 2022. So they've been around about a year and a half, relatively young in the world of certification exams, which means we expect that these 2 exams will retire somewhere around October of 2025. That gives you plenty of time as we sit here in December of 2023 to earn your certification. It'll be old news for you by the time October 2025 comes along. The 2 exams themselves are 90 minutes in length. There is a grading scale from 100 to 900 for both exams. And in that range, you need to earn a 675 to pass your 1101 or Core 1 exam. If you're taking your Core 2 exam, we're having our Core 2 study group on Thursday. Our Core 2 exam, you need to earn a 700. So you have to do a little bit better on the Core 2 version. And regardless, this is something that once you pass both of these, you are certified for 3 years. That's a good 3-year certification. You can, of course, renew that certification anytime during that 3-year period to extend another 3 years after that. So there's always a way to extend this. You probably will never take these exams again once you pass them the very first time. The Core 1 exam itself consists of a number of different topics. All of these we'll try to cover today. They are mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So we have quite a bit there to step through. This is a series of questions and a series of topics that CompTIA calls domains. So this mobile devices is domain 1, networking is domain 2, and so on. So you have all 5 of those domains that you have to cover in this. We also have a replay available of this live stream immediately afterwards on YouTube. It's available. I hit stop. It takes a minute or 2 to get onto the YouTube platform, and then it's ready to go. I also have an audio-only podcast distributed version that's available at professormesser.com/podcast. For our A+, our Network+, and our Security+, you'll find those audio replays out on professormesser.com/podcast. They're also on your favorite streaming platform. So if you're on Spotify, simply search for Professor Messer. You'll find all of our live streams there as well. You may even notice that about a day after the live stream is done on YouTube, that the YouTube video description has been filled in with timestamps. So you can find exactly what you're looking for in those timestamps by simply following the video description. And by clicking on a timestamp, it's a bookmark that takes you directly to that time in the video. That's thanks to my marketing manager, Lori. Hey, Lori. She's reading or listening through all of this and probably watching it at about 2x speed to be able to get through all of it. Thank you, Lori, for doing this. She's done all of our live stream timestamps for years, and this is something hopefully that will help you find what you need when you're studying for your certification. Also let you know that when we're not here live, you'll probably be able to find me on Discord. That's where I'm usually hanging out. We have our own Discord here at Professor Messer. You'll find it at professormesser.com/Discord. So if you'd like to chat with others who are studying for their certification, maybe participate in an ad hoc study group where you can study amongst yourselves. We have rooms that you can create dynamically in the Discord server. So you can simply click on that. It creates its own channel. You're now in charge of the channel. And then you can allow people in to watch, listen, talk about, and discuss some of the topics from your exam. And of course, there's the normal Discord chat that's also available on Discord. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. Also let you know that eventually you'll need to take your exam. And you could certainly go to the CompTIA website and pay full price for that exam. But if you're in the US or Canada, I would love to give you a discounted voucher so that you don't pay that much for your exam. You can find this at professormesser.com/vouchers. This is one that will work for any of the CompTIA exams. And not only do you get your voucher for a discount, you also get additional content that you won't get anywhere else. So buying a voucher at professormesser.com includes my Exam Hacks ebook, where I've compiled a list of tips and tricks that have helped me through my certification studies. It's something that can even give you tips that could potentially earn your points during the exam itself. another set of things that can help you. And of course, that's provided free if you purchase the voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier. The question is, a network administrator is adding an SPF record to a DNS server. Which of the following would be provided with this configuration? Would it be version of the DNS config, list of authorized mail servers, IPv6 address of an FQDN, digitally signed email addresses, or instructions on handling unauthorized emails? Let's close the poll and see how you did. And you can see that 64% of you say that this SPF record is to provide a list of authorized mail servers. That's a very strong percentage. I think it's a little better than what we did in last month's study group. 12% of you said it's a version of the DNS config. 10% said it's digitally signed email addresses. And then we have 7% that said instructions on handling unauthorized emails. And 5% said IPv6 address of an FQDN. Well, anytime you see SPF, we're referring to the Sender Policy Framework. This is a protocol that you can add into a DNS text record that designates which hosts are authorized to send mail for this particular domain or fully qualified domain name, which is what FQDN is. So this is not a perfect way to prevent someone from spoofing information from your server, but it is a very good way, especially if they're trying from a third-party server. This means that when somebody receives an email from my server, it checks to see if that email was really sent from a professormesser.com server. And if it wasn't, they simply throw it out or put it into the spam folder because it was obviously something that was not authorized to be able to send mail for my domain. And you can see that these other options in here are all associated with other records in the DNS server. Things like a start of authority record. You've got IPv6 addresses would go in a quad A record. Digitally signed email addresses and instructions for handling unauthorized emails are part of the DKIM and the rest of. I have a whole series of explanations and videos on these, but you've got a lot that you can go through on my videos that talk specifically about protecting emails. It's such an important thing, and you will certainly run into it regardless of what organization that you happen to work for. This is an important thing to remember and consider, and if you're on the exam, you should know what all of these different DNS types are for. They're all in the exam objectives, which is a great place to go to learn about all of those. So we've got now this situation that we've worked through questions from last month. I think we did pretty good with that one. Now let's do some new questions. And as many of you know, the first new question on a study group is not a multiple choice question. Multiple choice questions are like the ones we just did, where there was a question and then there were multiple choices to select from. But CompTIA doesn't want to give everything away or even make it so that you could accidentally stumble into the right question. Instead, they have a handful of questions at the beginning of the exam that they call performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are anything but multiple choice. So they could be fill in the blank. They could be putting you at a command prompt and asking you to perform a function. They might be a drag and drop question on your screen. You might have pull down menus to choose from. There could be you could be a matching question. It could be putting things in a particular order, especially when it relates to speeds and feeds, for example. But for you today, I have more of a visual performance-based question. You could certainly get these on your exam as well. This question is asking you for 4 specific pieces of information, and in this case, it's a bit of a fill-in-the-blank question. This question is I say very simply, we're about to find out, identify the interfaces. And you can see that I have 4 interfaces marked on this particular diagram. These 4 interfaces are those that are really from the back of a computer. I just have a picture here of the back of a PC. What are these 4 interfaces? And that's what I want to know. So obviously, this is one that you can answer by visiting the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. We also have the Vevox app that you could step through as well. The Vevox app will certainly just redirect you over to professormesser.com/QA today anyway. So let's see how you did. with answering this one. There is, of course, a lot of interfaces on this particular screen. I'm obviously interested in the ones that are marked in the yellow outline. So you have a number to choose from. You have this interface A. We need to know what that one is. Interface B. We have interface C over on this side, and just underneath is interface D. And there's a lot of other interfaces on here as well. Some of these you might know what they are. Some of these you may not, but the important part is marked with the A, B, C, and D. So you can fill those in. A lot of people are already putting in answers on the website of what all of these might be. I think most of you are doing pretty good with these. And there are some of these interfaces that may have more than one name, and I'll take any name. I don't care. We will figure out what it happens to be. I think a number of you have worked with some of these interfaces before. I'm watching these come through. And some of them we're getting right. There's one specific interface on here that tends to be, I know one that most everyone is getting, and then there's another one that maybe some of you are getting. So we'll have to see how you do when we get to the end of this one. This should be interesting to see how well we roll this one up. This is obviously a fill in the blank, so we won't see the actual results from this one. I'm sort of just eyeballing it as I'm watching all of these things go through and go by. I get to see all of them as they're working through these. So maybe by the way, everything on here, in fact, let's see, everything that's on A and B and over to the right are things that you should know for the exam. Obviously, some of these are duplicated. This almost looks Photoshop, but it's real. That's how many of these interfaces are stacked up on this particular motherboard. And these buttons on the side, these are not interfaces, these are buttons, and you can tell they are specific to the BIOS. They allow on this particular motherboard, there are multiple BIOS versions that you can store, and you can flip between those different versions. That certainly helps. If you run into a problem during an upgrade, you can flip over to the other BIOS and you haven't lost anything, which is kind of nice. Let's see how you did with this one. We're identifying these interfaces. So let's start with the interface numbered or lettered A. Let's see what A happens to be. Now, one of the interesting parts about this one is you can tell that A is not a symmetrical interface. It seems to be relatively symmetrical, and then on one corner, it's kind of cut off. It's a little bit different on that lower left corner. And if you look inside, you can kind of see this upside down U-shaped interface that's on the middle of this. That's because that is a DisplayPort interface. It's one that is designed for video output, and you can see that it is very uniquely shaped. So if you ever see that odd D shape with kind of a corner built out on the end of it, that's most likely a DisplayPort interface. That also keeps you from plugging in that DisplayPort interface into other large interfaces like the one that you would find with Answer B. Answer B is one that I think most of us got this one because it is a very common interface, not just in computing, but in consumer electronics in general. That is also a video interface. In this case, it's an HDMI interface. So HDMI is one that you'll notice is right next to the DisplayPort. That's very common on these motherboards to put the display or the video outputs very close to each other. It's not always that way, but it's very often it is configured like that. Now let's look at interface C. Interface C is a more of a square interface with the little bump out on the top of it. And you can see if you start working through these, if you start sort of breaking down what these happen to be, that's a very common Ethernet interface. A number of you put Ethernet as the answer. That's completely acceptable because that's what it is. But we could also refer to that interface as an RJ45 interface. So both of those kind of makes sense. And in fact, RJ45s on the back of a computer are almost exclusively used for Ethernet connectivity. RJ45 is used for different types of connectivity, though. If you ever see an RJ45 on any type of device, you can't automatically assume that's Ethernet because it could be using a serial or some other type of connection out of that very standardized connector. But in this case, it's Ethernet. I'll take Ethernet. I'll accept RJ45. If you answered those two, you got it right. And lastly is this tiny little round oval of an interface that is interface D. That is a USB connection, USB-C specifically. So although we have tons of USB type A's on this motherboard, we have 4 that appear to be the 1X series, and we have 4 that appear to be the 2X series. And then you have this very smaller USB-C interface at the bottom, along with maybe a 3X USB just above it for a Type A. So USB-C is one. We don't know what that USB-C is sending or what it has available, but we do know that that USB-C connection is very common to find on most motherboards these days. Very, very simple to be able to make that happen. So we have a little bit more to be able to work through. This is a bit of a challenge if you start looking at working through the differences in all of these different connectors. It's useful to be able to visualize them directly. If you can go to Google and type in interfaces on a motherboard or the back panel of a computer, and it will provide you on the image search with tons of images, you can drill down into any of those and see if you can start making out what some of those happen to be. Another good way to study this is to go to a motherboard manufacturer's website, and you can pull down the manuals for these motherboards along with graphics, so you can view the visual of what that motherboard looks like, and then you can look through the manual, because there are block diagrams in the manual that tell you what all those interfaces are. So it's a really inexpensive and absolutely free way to start studying the components that are on the inside of a motherboard, as well as the interfaces that are on the outside of a motherboard. And that can get you through a performance-based question if you happen to get one that goes through some of these images and being able to see it. So that's what we were hoping to find. We have DisplayPort was our interface A. Interface B is HDMI. Interface C is Ethernet. And interface D is USB-C. So if you answered those with all 4 of those questions, then you did exactly right. 100% well done. I think that's a pretty good motherboard to be able to work through. If you're someone who's working on those motherboards, that's not a bad one. I tried to pick one relatively modern. This one has a number of different interfaces, and it's very interesting to see what different motherboards and different manufacturers will put on them. Let's now shift gears back to a multiple choice question. This next multiple choice question asks, a company has built their own cloud-based applications for use in their internal data centers. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Would it be SaaS, high availability, community infrastructure, rapid elasticity, or private cloud? I have a number of options here. And if you think you know the answer, you want to visit professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. The question again asks, a company has built their own cloud-based applications for use in their internal data centers. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Is it SaaS, high availability, community infrastructure, rapid elasticity, or private cloud? Again, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We'll have to see how we do this. This is when there's a section in the Core 1 that is all about cloud-based infrastructures. And it is not the largest section, but it does have a large percentage of the exam relative to the amount of content that's there. So it's interesting that there's a much smaller set of pages there. In fact, I think it's probably only 2 subdomains, but it is a lot of questions that you could get on your exam relative to the other parts of these subdomains. So be sure you know about these cloud-based technologies. You will certainly get a question or 2 or 3 or more in your exam about cloud-based technologies, the infrastructures, the components of these infrastructures, how you would implement this on a system. There's a number of different questions you can run through. And this is another one that you should absolutely be aware of. If you are planning to take this exam anytime soon, make sure you grab those exam objectives and go through this section in detail. There's certainly going to be content on your exam about this one. Let's see how you did with this. The question again asked, a company has built their own cloud-based applications for use in their internal data centers. Which of the following would best describe this deployment? Is it SaaS, high availability, community infrastructure, rapid elasticity, or private cloud? Well, let's see how you answered it. 75% of you say it's private cloud would best describe this deployment. We have 16% that say software as a service would best describe this deployment. And then we have single digits for everything else. 3% say high availability, 2% say community infrastructure, and less than 1% say rapid elasticity, even though rapid elasticity sounds best. It sounds great, doesn't it? So if you are deploying a cloud-based infrastructure into your own data center, we refer to that as a private cloud. No one else has access to this cloud that you're building. You're buying all of these, the equipment, the storage, the CPU, the memory, all of the systems you need. You're effectively creating your own cloud provider, but it's your network and it's your data center. So this is very useful if you don't want to go outside your company and use external resources. And it may be that your organization is one that has very sensitive data, and putting that data in a cloud infrastructure that's public may not be something that you're comfortable with doing from a security perspective. So it would be good to have all of that in-house so you can build your own cloud in-house. Just as the cloud providers are building it in their data center, you build it in your own data center, and we call that a private cloud. We also have a public cloud, and if you're connecting to or using cloud-based services that are on Amazon Web Services, you're at Rackspace, you're in the Azure cloud, you are in a public cloud. And that's certainly not the question that we were asking here, but it's obviously one of the most popular cloud-based infrastructures, and the ways that people are able to take advantage of the cloud is through a public cloud. You don't have to buy any of the equipment. You just use the cloud that's already out there from Amazon, Azure, or anyone else. We also have a mix of these. In many organizations, they're using a little bit of their own private cloud, a little bit of their own public cloud. That would be a hybrid cloud. And then if you are using a cloud that many organizations have worked together to create, maybe you don't want to pay for everything in this cloud, and there's other organizations that are similar to yours that might chip in a little bit of money to build out your own private cloud. We often refer to that as a community cloud. Well, that means that a private cloud is certainly the answer that we were looking for here. And you can see that 75% also thought that that would be the right answer. Software as a service is a way to describe the way applications are delivered once they are in that cloud. And if you are writing your own apps, this is probably not going to be a software as a service scenario, since you're the one who has to write it. Software as a service is one where you don't write the software, you don't manage the systems, you have no idea how they're even managed on the inside. All you do is open your browser, go to a website, and log in and use the app. Well, it doesn't really describe what's happening in this question. So in this case, software as a service would not be the correct response. We have 3% that said high availability. And if we had something in the question that talked about multiple data centers, multiple network designs, redundant power connections, or some type of method to keep things running when things go badly, then it could possibly be high availability. But nothing in this question even mentioned anything along those particular lines. So high availability would not be the correct answer. We did discuss community infrastructure and how multiple organizations could work together to create their own cloud-based technologies. But in this case, it's a single company. There's no one else they're working with. Therefore, it would not be a community. And then we have rapid elasticity, which is certainly an important aspect and characteristic of cloud-based technologies, where you can simply click your screen and build out an entire infrastructure. And probably even more importantly, when you don't need that infrastructure anymore, you can click a button and it all disappears. That is rapid elasticity, and that really describes the way we're able to expand and contract the resources available that we are using in a particular cloud-based infrastructure. Also doesn't really describe the question that was asked. In this case, by far, the answer would be private cloud. 75% of you did great. You got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do some more multiple choice-based questions. I have another one for you. We're going to skip over to our troubleshooting section because I have a question for you that asks this. A user's laptop computer randomly powers down during the workday, and the technician suspects a thermal issue. Which of the following would be the best way to gather temperature information on this computer? Would it be Safe Mode, Event Viewer, System BIOS, Task Manager, or Windows Update? I have a few things to go through here. So a user's laptop computer randomly powers down during the workday, and the technician suspects a thermal issue. Which of the following would be the best way to gather temperature information on this computer? Is it Safe Mode, Event Viewer, System BIOS, Task Manager, or Windows Update? Got a few options. And here's what's interesting about this question. It doesn't have the answer I want to have. This is one that is intentional on these particular questions, is that the answer that you think, in fact, they're even saying in the chat room, the answer that you would naturally be your go-to isn't listed as one of the available options. This is not uncommon, by the way, not just on the exam. This is not uncommon in real life. There may be certain utilities that you don't have access to, or you're not able to run, or you may be restricted from running. So these are the only things we're able to run on this computer. Which should we use? In fact, there's the number of interesting options there, and being able to see what these happen to be. This would be a good one to kind of break down and see where these are. And some of you, I think, are probably looking through the different options to figure out, where would I go to see what these different options might be? And this is a great place to see some of these and kind of break down what these happen to be. Maybe you are familiar with them. We'll have to see and what these are, and breaking down and understanding what these happen to be. So let's now kind of have a look at what our possible answers might be. I'm going to give you another second to lock these down by going to professormesser.com/QA. We'll have to see what you chose. So if we have a look, a number of you have already locked in your answers. So let's see how you answered this one. We have 54% that say System BIOS. We have 23% that say Event Viewer, and 16% that say Task Manager. Then we go down to single digits, 5% for Safe Mode, 0% for Windows Update. Well, won't you be surprised when Windows Update is the right? No, Windows Update is not the right answer. It's not. There are a number of different places you can go to gather information about these particular things. And if you start looking into why the system happens to be stopping, why it is rebooting, why we are having this problem, you may be able to figure out why it's happening by going to the Event Viewer. The Event Viewer logs everything, especially when you get a blue screen, the system has that Windows stop error. All of this is always logged into the events on your system, and you can view those events through Event Viewer. And so that's a very good place to go. Now, at this point, maybe you run Performance Monitor. And I think that's where I would probably go to gather a long-term statistics on how hot this system is getting, on the thermal characteristics of the different parts of the system. How hot is the storage drive? How hot is the memory? How hot is the CPU? And really understanding all of these to make this happen. But our question was not about why what is happening or what's being logged. Our question was about, how do we gather temperature information on this computer? And if we don't have anything available in our system, we may need to go, we don't have access to Performance Monitor. That wasn't one of the options here. Well, there's no third-party utility that was listed in the answers to be able to view temperature. The only other place we could go based on the 5 options that we had would be the BIOS. If you've ever drilled down into the BIOS, you will know absolutely there's fan status information, temperature details. There's a lot of information about the internals of your system and the performance statistics associated with that. So if you ever want to know how's the fan running, what's the temperature of my system, and other configuration settings, they're all in your BIOS. You can find all of that. And in fact, it will track this over time in many cases. Now, obviously, we can only view that information for a certain amount of time. Then we have to restart our system and start working on it again. So that's not the most practical way to view and measure some of the statistical information, but it can give you details about what may be happening along with the temperatures inside of your system. And so that's where I would probably go. Given the 5 different options, let's break them down and see if we really have a better option available. System BIOS is what 54% of you chose. That's the only option of these 5 that I would choose as well. So I would say in this case, that's the one that is my number 1 on this list. Event Viewer is great for viewing events, but the Event Viewer doesn't give you any real-time information or even not real-time information about what's happening with temperature inside of your system. You can't go to the Event Viewer and look at temperature values. It's simply not there, so that would not be the best option here, would not even be an option that we could choose. Task Manager is a great utility that provides a lot of detail and shows me how the tasks are running. There is some information we can get there about power usage and other metrics, but it's not really designed to give us a lot of information about temperature, at least not real-time temperature inside of your system. So that's not going to be our best choice either. I would not choose Task Manager for this process either. And then we've got Safe Mode, which is a great go-to for troubleshooting, but Safe Mode by itself does not provide any additional temperature details. In fact, if you can see it in Safe Mode, you could just as easily see it outside of Safe Mode. So that's not going to help you either to be able to see that. And then lastly, Windows Update. Nobody else thought Windows Update shows temperature information, and you thought that because it isn't. So that is one that is actually going to provide you with a little more detail. So the question is, it's not an optimal answer, but that wasn't the question. The question asks, which of the following would be the best way to gather temperature information on this computer? Your only option that's available is your system BIOS. 54% of you got that one right. That's the one I would choose as well. And I think we did very well in figuring out what that one happened to be. This is, by the way, and some people have mentioned this in the chat room, that this is not, and the answer that's here is not optimal. And in fact, in the world of working with computers, you will often be in a situation where the final result or what you plan on doing to the system may not be optimal, because you may not have the option to be able to use these other utilities or take advantage of a different login or be able to access a particular set of resources. So you have to go to plan B or plan C or plan D. And sometimes that's just what you end up working with. Maybe this is one of those situations. And indeed, System BIOS would be the only option available, and that's the one that I would choose as well. Well, this gives you a little bit of an idea or a feel of the type of things that you would find on the A+ exam. And if you have a look at the videos on my site, there are 137 videos just for the A+ certification. That's a lot of videos consisting of over 19 hours of content. Covers information like you see here: networking, hardware, security. We've got details about command lines and mobile devices and lots of troubleshooting. So if you're ever trying to work through this content, there's a lot of details that you would need to know. And another thing you might notice is that there's also not just the details themselves, but there's a great deal of information that's useful as reference information. And if you happen to go to have a look at my course notes, I don't have the physical course notes out here, but I do have my digital ones right here, the 2201101 course notes. Everything that's in my videos, all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the charts, all of the diagrams that I create, they are in these course notes. So you won't miss anything from this list of course notes that you have here. It's all inside of this. So if you need one consolidated view in either a digital form, which you just saw using the PDF version of the course notes, there are also printed versions that you could get. I call that my physical edition. If you purchase the physical edition, you also get the digital edition for no additional charge. So as soon as you make that order, I will work on printing and shipping that set of course notes to you. But in the meantime, you can download those course notes immediately and start using them. Put them on all of the devices that you carry throughout the day. There's no restrictions for you to use these as a a personal use. So absolutely take advantage of that too. I have both Core 1 and Core 2 course notes available. You're able to look at those on my website. You can find out more by visiting professormesser.com/1101 notes. And not only does hopefully this help you earn your A+ certification, it's also a great way to support what we're doing here. So I want to thank everyone who already owns these. Thank you for your support. And for those of you that are considering it, hopefully you think that it will be going towards a very good cause, not just for yourself, but for others who will come after you. Let's do some more questions, shall we? I've got another one here. Let's talk about tablet computers. This one says, the stylus on a tablet computer has stopped working. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is this a digitizer fault, corrupted RAM, incorrect video resolution, network cable short, or storage is full? We have a number of different problems. All of these are bad things, but we're looking for a specific thing. The question again asks, the stylus on a tablet computer has stopped working. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it digitizer fault, corrupted RAM, incorrect video resolution, network cable short, or storage is full? This next to last one sounds like I wrote it poorly, like it's bad grammar. I'm not saying the network cable is too short. I'm saying there is a short in the network cable. There's two different things. So make sure, maybe it's both. I don't know. It could be. But we're really looking for one specific answer here. Let's see if you know it. As always, you can answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to go directly to those and be able to work through all of this. Go to professormesser.com/QA. See if you happen to know what this one is. A lot of people working through this one. They're going through the details of this question. So keep working on this particular one and submit what you think the right answer might be for this. Let's see how you did. A lot of people answer this one quickly. I always wonder, did we answer it quickly because we knew the answer, or did we answer it quickly because we were just guessing? Sometimes that happens too. So let's see how we did with this one. The question again asks, the stylus on a tablet computer has stopped working. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Is it a digitizer fault, corrupted RAM, incorrect video resolution, network cable short, or storage is full? And let's see how you did with this question. We'll stop the polling, and we can see that by far, not even close, it was a gimme, that 94% of you say it is a fault of the digitizer. And then we have 1% apiece that say corrupted RAM, incorrect video resolution, and either a short in the cable or the cable is too short. And then we have nobody said the storage was full. Now, what's interesting is that corrupted RAM could possibly cause this problem. It's unlikely. And also storage being full, I think, could possibly cause a similar problem like this, probably more than just the stylus not working, but it could possibly be the problem. But that wasn't the question. The question asked, what would the most likely reason for this issue be? And the digitizer is what it would be. The digitizer is the technology that is able to take something from the physical analog world and working through it and somehow turn it into the digital world. And that's the purpose of a digitizer and what it does. It takes those analog inputs from a stylus and turns them into something that your laptop, tablet, or other device is able to use. That I think is an important consideration if you're troubleshooting these types of systems, and it's something you should consider, especially if you're working on laptops that have these touch screens or tablets. This is an important thing to keep in mind. These digitizers will be the main connection between that stylus and what's inside of that device. Now, corrupted RAM, as I mentioned, could possibly cause a problem like this, but generally when your RAM gets corrupted, the system is just going to fail. It's just going to crash pretty quick. So this probably is not going to be what you run into. An incorrect video resolution would simply show things on the screen that are much larger or much smaller than what you were expecting. They might even be out of skew for what you were expecting, but it wouldn't cause the stylus to stop working. We'd still be able to use the stylus even though the information on the screen is difficult to see. A short in the network cable would cause part of that connection to stop working, or perhaps work at a reduced speed. And if that's the case, then we certainly have a problem transferring data, but it doesn't cause your stylus to stop working. And then lastly, storage being full. That's a problem for any operating system. You don't want that to happen, but usually that's another case very similar to RAM, that when your storage gets full, everything stops working, not just the stylus. So that's not going to be the situation. Our issue here is indeed related to the digitizer. That's probably your most likely reason that you would have a problem with the stylus. So let's see how we do with this next question. I want to give you one that's a little bit more difficult. And this is one that hopefully you're familiar with based on the information from the networking section of Core 1. This question asks, a server is configured for DHCP, but always receives the same IP address after rebooting. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Would it be the T1 timer, the DHCP pool, address reservation, dynamic routing, or DNS server configuration? A server is configured for DHCP but always receives the same IP address after rebooting. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Is it T1 timer, DHCP pool, address reservation, dynamic routing, or DNS server configuration? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in what you think the answer might be. A number of you are already putting yours in to be able to see this. This is one that hopefully you're familiar with some of the DHCP technologies and things that you need to know. Everything on this list comes from that section of the networking domain. So make sure you're familiar with all of these. This is all taken from the exam objectives, so make sure you're familiar with them. You could be asked about any of them and being able to work through them. So feel free, have a look at what is available, be able to pick the right answer, what you think is the right answer, and find all of these. So for those of you that have worked through problems like this before, you know there's a lot of troubleshooting questions on the exam. This is one of these. So make sure you're not only learning what the technologies do, but you also take time to learn how to analyze and resolve problems with those technologies, which on the exam, I think a lot of people run into problems when they get those questions about an issue that they have to now find the answer to. It's sometimes difficult to do when you're dealing with multiple choice questions. So let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a server is configured for DHCP, but always receives the same IP address after rebooting. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this? Is it T1 timer, DHCP pool, address reservation, dynamic routing, or DNS server configuration? How did you answer? Let's see. And you can see that address reservation came in with 73% of the vote. But we got 10% with DNS server configuration. We've got 7% that said DHCP pool. We have 5% that said dynamic routing, and then 3% say T1 timer. So by far, we got a large number of folks, in this case 73%, that say address reservation is what they would choose. And I'll tell you in a moment why that is probably the best answer from all of these, but not the answer that I thought of initially. So we'll talk about that in a moment as well. So if you're familiar with working on a DHCP server, one of the things you're able to do is to reserve a particular IP address that is based on the MAC address of that device. That way you know every time you see that MAC address, it should always receive the same IP address from the DHCP server. It's a good way to always know that a particular device or service is always going to receive that same IP address. What's nice about this is you could, of course, manually go to the device and manually assign these IP addresses. That's another way to guarantee that that device will always receive the same IP address. And in many organizations, and I've been to hundreds and hundreds of both monster-sized organizations and small businesses, that whenever somebody needs to always have a particular IP address configured for a device, they tend to manually put it into that device. So they will go to that server, to that firewall, to that system, and manually type in 192.168.1.6, and they will save it and lock it into that connection. Now, what's interesting about that is what you do when you need to change that IP address. And this is the benefit of creating an address reservation. If suddenly you now need to change any of these IP addresses, like for instance, we decide that Odyssey is going to be put on a different subnet and we're going to change that IP address to 10.1.1.9. Well, if I was using that manually configured process, I would have to go to that device and make a change into that device's configuration, which may or may not be what you would like to do. And in fact, it becomes even more difficult if you have to change 10 of these or 20 of these or 100 of these. Now you have to go to all 100 of those devices manually to do it. But if you've configured an address reservation, you go to one screen and you simply change the configuration in the main screen of the DHCP reservations on your DHCP server. This is really the most efficient way to lock in a particular IP address for a device, because you know they're going to be receiving these always when it reboots. The other part of this is you can change it at any time from the DHCP screen, much easier to manage. And when you're talking about scalability, when you're talking about managing hundreds or even thousands of systems, you have to think along the lines of what's the most efficient? What is the least waste of my time? And DHCP reservations would certainly fit that particular category. The reason I told you this may not be my first answer on this list is that you've probably seen this, that most DHCP servers will remember the MAC address you had last time you logged on. And it has assigned a dynamic address to your IP address. It simply pulled one out of the pool and it gave it to you. We're assuming in this case that you plugged in a laptop. That laptop doesn't have a DHCP reservation. It's simply getting a random IP address pulled from the pool. But if you power down that laptop, you unplug it, you come back the next day and plug in, and you start your laptop up again, you'll notice that the DHCP server renewed and created a new IP address for you, but it's the same IP address you had yesterday. I don't have a reservation, yet when I turned this off, I left and I came back, I got the same IP address again. And that's because the DHCP server, even though it saw you leave and it released that IP address back into the pool, it kept that there for you in case you came back. And when you come back, it's going to give you the same IP address again. It remembers you and is able to give you that same IP address. Now, perhaps during the time you left and came back, a lot of people came onto the network and your old IP address was given away. Well, in that case, of course, you won't receive the same IP address again. But there are things that are incredibly useful to be able to work through. So this is one where DHCP can work in a number of different ways. But if you want to guarantee that you are always going to receive a particular IP address, you're looking for address reservation. That is absolutely a functionality that you will find on a DHCP server. The T1 timer describes that first timer when your device is going to check in to try to renew your lease. And that T1 timer on most DHCP systems, the default that you will find, happens 50% into your lease. So if your lease is 7 days long, it waits until 3.5 days have gone by, and then it will renew itself after that T1 timer hits. We have a DHCP pool. 7% of you chose that one. The pool is a grouping of IP addresses that can be handed out randomly. And so in this case, we're receiving the same IP address every day. It's most likely that we are not getting our IP address from the pool. Instead, our IP address is being provided to us automatically through an IP reservation. We've also got a great deal of networking things that we need, networking topics and that we need to know for this exam. And dynamic routing is one of those. Dynamic routing is a way that routers can talk to each other to maintain the routing table. Well, in this case, we're not talking about a routing table. We're talking about receiving the same IP address over and over. So in this case, dynamic routing would not be the right answer. And a DNS server configuration, which came in at number 2 in our list with about 10% of you. The DNS server is, of course, the device that is able to provide us with an IP address when we give it a fully qualified domain name, or vice versa. It can provide us with a fully qualified domain name if we give it an IP address. But all of that is the ability to find other addresses on the network. That DNS server is not involved in the IP configuration for your system. It is something that you use afterwards to query and find other devices. So if you're always getting the same IP address, it has nothing to do with the DNS server. It has everything to do with a reservation that is inside of your DHCP server. So if you answered address reservation, like 73% of you did, you got it absolutely correct. Well done. So if you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that guarantees, that says you are absolutely here watching this live stream. And in fact, you have to have this if you are watching this on a replay. And the way that you can earn that webinar category CEU is you follow these instructions. Go to the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a link there for Contact Us. Click that Contact Us link. It will bring up a form. In that form, put your name, put your email address. On the subject line, put December 2023 Core 1. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, dynamic routing. Dynamic routing are the super secret code words of the month. I had to think that one up. Where did I get that from? It's from right here on the screen. Dynamic routing is our super secret code word of the month. And you can put that on a line by itself in the body of the message. If you'd like to add other things to the message as well, you're welcome to add anything else under that line. I read through every single one of these, and I do like reading them. So thank you for adding that content. But you don't have to. Just simply put dynamic routing, send it to me, and we're done. So that's all I need, and I'll make sure I turn these around in about a week. You'll receive an email from me that has a digital signature attached to it, where you can even verify that I was indeed the person who sent this to you, and nothing in that message was modified between the time that I sent it and the time that you received it. That's more of a security plus feature, but it's something you can always use. Again, that process is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, put December 2023 Core 1. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, dynamic routing. Dynamic routing are the super secret code words. Really not so secret anymore, is it? Super secret code words of the month. Okay, we've got time for another question, so let's do one. Folks in the chat room were saying, can we make it more difficult? Can we really just put a zinger in here? Can we really? Well, you did ask for it. So I'm going to give you one that asks this question. This question asks, which colors in the 568A and 568B color schemes have the same pin assignments between both standards? And I want you to pick 2 of these. Is it blue, white, green, orange, white, brown, or green? At least we only have 5 to choose from, right? Which colors in the 568A and 568B color schemes have the same pin assignments between both standards? And I want you to pick 2. The exam also will have you pick a certain number at some times, and this is the way you do it. Go to the possible options again are blue, white, green, orange, white, brown, or green. If you think you know the answer, please visit professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to lock in what those 2 answers are for this one. Maybe you know what this one happens to be. So let's see if you are familiar with all of these. Some of you, you know the 568A and 568B cold. So now's your time to start comparing those 2 and figure out what this answer might be. So hopefully that would be one that you're familiar with. This is something hopefully you are familiar with. It's technology that is listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with it. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Also, no hints in the chat room, which is, you'll notice there's a lot of deleting in the chat room right now. That would be why. There's a lot of people talking about what this could possibly be. So we're going to tell you, nope, you can't talk about that in the chat room. We'll have to figure out what these answers could possibly be and breaking them down. Hopefully I coded it properly. This is the important part. First, can we select two? And secondly, is it the right two? Which is the hard part. That's my problem. That's my thing that I have to work through. We'll figure out what these are. So let's see. I'm giving you a couple of, some folks are still figuring it out. Some folks are still putting a few in. I'm the same way. It takes me a while to kind of break down a lot of these. So this is the one that hopefully you're familiar with. Now, of course, note if you're looking at your notes, if you're looking at the Google, you're cheating. Don't do that. See if you can guess what it happens to be. Just close that window out. You don't need that window there. Focus on this question and the answers. You don't get a Google during the exam. So you're going to have to, at some point, let go of the internet and kind of focus on what's in your own brain and break this one down. So hopefully this should give you some familiarity with this. Let's see how we do with other parts of this. Let's see how you did. I think we've got a number of people that have put in their answers. We're going to break this down and see how we do. Which colors in the 568A and 568B color schemes have the same pin assignments between both standards? And we want to pick two in both of these. The possible answers are blue, white, green, orange, white, brown, and green, which are all different colors. Let's see how you answered this one. We're going to stop and see which two most people chose. And it's difficult to see this on a percentage because we don't know who chose what and who chose the other. But the two most selected answers here are blue and white, brown. Those are the two that most people are saying are the same between those two standards. Those are at 66% and 62% respectively. And then white, green, and orange and green all came in at about 21%, 19%, and 24%. They're all basically tied for second place. But is that the right answer? Is blue and white, brown the right answer? Well, the best way to tell would be to look at the standards themselves. We'll just look at them side by side. We have 568A on the left side and 568B on the right side. And if you look, the two answers we had were blue and white, brown. And if you look at the A standard and B standard, pin 1 is not the same between them. A is white and green, and B is white and orange. And the same thing for pin 2. On A is green and B is orange. And even pin 3 is different, white and orange and white and green. But you'll notice at this point, we start to see some similarities. We have blue and white and blue are exactly the same. They're pins 4 and 5 between both standards. You also notice that pins 7 and 8 are the same between both standards, and those colors are white and brown and brown. So everything that is a color of blue and everything that is a color of brown are the same between these two different standards on those particular pinouts. The things that change between those two would be the colors green and the colors orange and the combinations of those. So anything that has blue in the answer and anything that has brown in the answer are correct answers. And indeed, 66% of you say the answer is blue. 62% say the answer is white, brown, which means the majority of you got this one absolutely correct. You did really good on this one to break down what you think the answer happened to be. Obviously, white and green are different between the two color schemes. Orange is different between the two color schemes, and green is different between the two color schemes. Therefore, the only answers here that have the same pin assignments are indeed blue and white and brown. Some folks in the chat room were even talking about crossover cables. Remember, 568A and 568B do not define crossover cables with Ethernet. Crossover cables are only defined in the IEEE 802.3 standard. The color schemes we use for 568A and 568B have nothing to do with crossover. And in fact, if you use that as a crossover cable, your gigabit crossover will not work. It's not a gigabit crossover connection. And that's really the way that you really tell. If you really think that's a crossover, go create a cable with those 2 pinouts, plug it into your gigabit Ethernet, tell me how that worked for you. And you'll find, oh, wait, that didn't cross over gigabit. It doesn't work. It's not a gigabit crossover, which has a completely different set of pinouts. So don't fool yourself there either. I think some people try to use that as a way to study for crossover, but in fact, not correct. Not what you would use for that one. So absolutely don't run into that situation either. The answer here is blue and white and brown, because the blue and brown colors are the same between both of those standards. So hopefully that gives you some perspectives. This only is really designed to tell you what colors to use. Has nothing to do with crossover cables, has nothing to do with loopbacks, has nothing to do with rollover cables. It doesn't define any type of cable. It simply defines the colors used for the wires that you would use when you're plugging in an RJ45 connection. That's all it's used for. So don't try to make it into something that it really isn't, because you will get trapped on your exam if you use that as a method of memorization for loopback or crossover or any other type of cable. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I do want to talk to you really quick about my practice exams. We're going to do one more question that comes from my practice exams, as a matter of fact. If you've not seen my practice exams book before, this is a set of practice exams that I created because I went out to the internet to see what practice exams were out there, and I found some really, really bad practice exams. Some very bad. The practice exams I ran into did not cover topics that were from the latest exam objectives, or they covered topics from previous versions of exams that we don't even test people on anymore. They're out of date, which is probably even worse. You're having to learn from those. I've seen people go, oh, yeah, I took those practice exams. They were really hard. No, they weren't hard. They were inaccurate. It's a completely different thing. So get accurate practice exams. And if you can, find practice exams that have been specifically written to have the same style, to have the same voice as the actual exam. And one of the best ways to do that is use some that have been written specifically for that purpose. That's why I created this set of practice exams. These are not questions that were farmed off to folks in some other country. These were not questions that were thrown into an AI to try to create questions, which, by the way, they're the worst questions you can find. Both of those scenarios create subpar, substandard questions. If you want the highest quality practice exams you can get, I dare say, you should look into the Professor Messer practice exams. They have been designed specifically to create a set of questions that will prepare you for the same style, the same voice, the same structure as the actual questions from your exam. Now, these are not actual exam questions. We are, after all, an ethical organization, but they do give you the same feel as the exam. And in some cases, that's half the battle, is really being very familiar with how the questions are asked. So hopefully that gives you a perspective. If you want to learn more about those, they're at professormesser.com/core1pe. And along those lines, let's do a question from the book. So let's hop over to the practice exams book. This is question A33. What page is this that I'm on? Page 12. So page 12, question A33 asks, a user is just connected to a new wireless network, but they can't view any internet websites. Their network configuration shows the IP address as 169.254.228.109. The subnet mask is 255.255.0.0, and they have not been assigned a default gateway. Which of these is the most likely cause of this issue? Is it the subnet mask is not correct? The internet provider is experiencing a temporary outage, the DHCP server is down, or the wireless adapter is not working properly? So you have 4 options to choose from. Now, this is a PDF, so I could annotate this PDF. If I think I know the answer, I can always choose an option on the screen, or I can highlight information which I think that might be important. You can see all of those here as well to give you at least a feel for what you think the answers might be. But of course, as we step through this, again, I'll make a reminder, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room as we step through this. Another thing that is extremely useful about this book is that the answers are all in the book. But if you've ever seen books like this before, the detailed answers are on page 68. We're on page 12, but the details are on page 68. So we could scroll to be able to get to page 68, but why would you do that? This is a PDF. I've already built in links in the PDF. So all you have to do is click the word, the details, zoom, goes to page 68, just like that. In fact, it's down here. If I scroll down, you'll even see page 68. It's right there. So instantly, we're able to jump all the way over to page 68, where, of course, we have the same question at the top and the different answers that are available. And in the answer C is the DHCP server is down. And, of course, I give you an explanation of the right answer and why that is the right answer. Now, of course, when I take the exams, I always get the questions wrong. And one of the things that irritates me in some of these online question banks is they don't tell you why the wrong answers are wrong. I think that's a huge opportunity that they're missing, because how are you supposed to learn from your mistakes if there's nothing to learn from? So when I started building this book, I thought, let's put in all of the explanations, not just why the right answer is right, but every wrong answer has an explanation about why it's wrong. This gives you a little bit of feedback so you can understand where you may have gone off to the wrong way, the wrong track, and now you can get a better understanding of why that right answer ended up being right in this particular question. I also will recommend, if you get this book and you get the answer right, I highly recommend you read through the wrong answers. It's very possible that some of the topics that are in the incorrect answers could appear in your exam as a primary question. And there's some great information that's stored in those incorrect answers. It may be another way to confirm for you that you have that particular piece of it, at least in your mind and locked in to what it happens to be. And of course, if you've read through the question and you don't even understand the question, well, that's a different kind of problem. In all of my questions, I also put a link to the video where this question was derived. So if you don't understand the terminology in the question or the abbreviations, or you want more clarification on really what's being asked, you could watch the video, then come back to the question. And I have both QR codes here. If you have the physical book, you can use your phone with the QR code to watch the video, or you can simply click the link in the PDF and it will take you directly to that one as well. Once you're done with this, now that we've looked at this question, we want to go back to where we started. You may not even realize that in most PDF readers, there's a back button. And mine is up here at the upper left. I'm going to click my back button, and it takes me right back to where we started. Now we're back on page 12, and I can continue with the next question that's in this list. Those are my practice exams. Maybe that's something that can help you with your studies. Feel free to have a look. It's on my website at professormesser.com/core1pe, or simply follow the pull-down links at the top of the page for the exam that you'd like to have your practice exams from. Something that might help you as you're going through your studies. And I think if you're planning to study, having some very well-written and specific practice exams can be a very good test to see just how much you've learned through the studying process. Also let you know that there's some free resources available on the CompTIA website you might not be aware of. I've talked all this time about the exam objectives, I keep talking about those exam objectives, and that's because they are so important and so valuable. There is a set of exam objectives that you can get on the CompTIA website. They list for you everything you need to know to pass this exam. Let me say that again. They list everything you need to know to pass your CompTIA exam. It's all in the exam objectives. It's interesting that not all certification bodies will use these objectives. There's a PDF file, it's free, and it gives you a bullet-by-bullet breakdown of everything you need to know. In fact, all of my training videos follow these bullet by bullet. That's the way I'm able to tell people everything that is in the objectives is also in my videos, because I've gone through and marked every single one of these out as I went through, to be sure that my course will be as comprehensive and as accurate as anything you will ever find, because I went letter by letter through these objectives, making sure you had the right content. You will never find information in my courses that's out of scope. You'll never find information that is missing, because I use the exam objectives, and you should use them too. They make a great checklist. You can use this to find everything you need to know. And as I mentioned, they stay so close to this list that if you are studying for your exam, use this as a checklist. And if you know everything in the exam objectives, you're going to pass. That's it. That's how close to the exam these are, is they stay extremely directed towards all of this. Make sure you're familiar with them. You can get these exam objectives by going to your favorite search engine and typing in CompTIA Exam Objectives. I also have a link from my site that will take you there. Go to professormesser.com/objectives, and they're free to download. You should get your hands on those. We do one of these study groups every month. We have a Core 2 study group in 2 days. So if you enjoyed this Core 1 study group, come on back on Thursday. We're going to do another one where I will talk about everything related to the Core 2 exam objectives. We've also got a Network+ and Security+ set of study groups available later in the month. So on the 13th is Network+, on the 20th is Security+, and of course, the January study groups have been scheduled. I don't know what my January is going to be like yet. This is like a year away. It's like in another year. Well, it's certainly in a different calendar year. So I'm not sure these dates are solid, but I've currently got the next A+ study groups configured as January 9th and January 11th. This is why I tell people, if you really want to know when the next live event is going to be, go to our calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you can, of course, have a look at when the next event will be. And when I make changes, they're always made on this calendar. So you'll be up to date to the second with everything I know about my own schedule. Sometimes we have to move things around. Sometimes we have to change when things are happening. I don't want you to show up thinking it's going to be at one time. It turns out to be another. So always check the calendar. It will let you know exactly what you need to know. Well, we're not done today. Even though I'm finished asking you questions, now's the part of the study group where you ask me questions. It's our after show that's coming up. Stick around for that. I will take questions directly in the Vevox, and we'll be able to have you ask some things of me that can be about technology, can be about certifications, it can be about none of those things, but you can always ask. And we'll go through as much as we possibly can in this next hour. Also want to remind you that if you're in the U.S. or Canada or a U.S. territory, we have vouchers for you that are already discounted on our site. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need to add an extension to your browser or any of these other crazy things that I've seen happen. You simply go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and the discount is already there waiting for you. Don't forget about my course notes and practice exams. You'll find those on the website as well at professormesser.com/1101success. And of course, we're on your favorite social media site. Just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the social media site you'd like to find me on, /Discord, /Twitter, /LinkedIn, /Instagram, /YouTube. It's all there. And if you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you could give it a thumbs up. You can do it right in the video player that you're in. And if you'd like to subscribe to our channel, that would be even better. It's a great way to support what we do here. My associates at YouTube, the folks that I work with there, they look at these numbers very carefully, and they know whether this is content that you enjoy or whether you don't enjoy it based on these numbers. I'd rather it be something you enjoy. So if you did, we would love it if you subscribe to our channel as well. It'd be a great favor to me, and I sure appreciate it. Well, thanks for being here. We've got a lot more coming. Stick around for the after show. Otherwise, we will see you next time on our A+ study group. Okay, let me take a sip. That's better. Let me get rid of too many of me's on the screen. There we go. Well, abrupt cut. And we cut to me. That was intentional. Let's try it again. There's a little bit smoother. I don't even know if that really comes across too well on the internet side anyway, with the compression and everything else going on. I guess if you're at a high resolution, it works pretty well. But this is the part of our study group, as I start adjusting things on my side, where you can ask me questions, which is a little bit different than what we generally will work through. So let me do that. Let me close some of the results that we have here. And you can see on your screen that it even tells you some instructions that you can use to be able to submit questions. And in this second hour, we will be taking your questions. Simply add them to your Vevox front end. Simply visit professormesser.com/QA to submit a question you might have. I imagine there are a number of you that have already put questions into this list, so I'm going to head over there right now and see what questions you have for me to be able to answer what some of these happen to be. So I think this is, there's a number of questions. These can be about technology. These can be about the exam objectives. These can be about IT. These can be about certifications, or they could just be about anything you want to know. Sometimes I don't answer the ones that are just anything you want to know. So I won't say that necessarily, but there are a lot here that we can go through and get some perspective on what other things might be there. So let's see what questions you have and what we may be working through with all of these. I want to sort of start slow, and we're going to work our way up with some of the answers that you have here. I want to start with some good news. We'll put this out here. Arena says, an update to my message during Security Plus, passed the exam with a 766. Thank you for all your help. What a great score. The important part, of course, is that you just get any score that's above the minimum. Really, any score is good to be able to make that happen. In this case, a passing score in Security Plus is so good. So congratulations, and thanks for the update that we had in our Security Plus study group. It's always good to know when we're able to have some successes. Hopefully, we're able to enjoy these successes as a group. I enjoy it personally myself. So even if you don't enjoy it, I'm super enjoying every time I hear someone getting their certification. So this is another great example. I like to share those with everybody when those are sitting. Congratulations, Arena, on your Security Plus certification. I don't know what's next in your world of technology and certifications in general, but I certainly hope you continue along those lines. Security Plus it's just everything's just the beginning. We're just getting started. Security is also such a fun world to work in. Speaking as someone who was a cybersecurity systems engineer, loved it, loved every minute of the security world and what we did. Along those same lines, is a good follow-up from Manfred, who asks, I'm in my late 20s, currently doing my master's degree in IT security. Didn't even know there were such things. I guess I did know, but you rarely see someone going through a master's degree in IT security. I have the feeling that I don't know anything except how to help people with their PC problems. Should I work in IT support instead? This is perhaps a combination of different things. So let's break this down a little bit. Manfred says, working on a master's degree in IT security, you're doing just fine from a security perspective, but you have the feeling you don't know anything except how to help people with their PC problems. By the way, for those of you that have been working in IT for a while, we feel this. We know this. We're familiar with this feeling. I think this is one that is very common in information technology, which is a highly technical field. And one of the things that most people don't realize is you will never know everything. It is impossible for one individual to know everything they need to know in this field. And not just everything they need to know. You will have certain parts of your skill set that are missing certain topics. There's different items you don't know. And as soon as you do know them, another set of technologies is going to come down the road that you've got to learn anyway. So one of the things that is very big in our industry is this imposter syndrome, this idea that you're not smart enough to do this job, the idea that you can't possibly know all of this, yet they're expecting you to be able to be responsible for it. This is just normal. This is the normal world that you live in, Manfred. This is what the normal world that we all live in, because you will never be at a place where you know everything you need to know. In fact, I'll argue that if you're in an organization, you've been there for a while, you know all the players, you know all the managers, you understand the technologies that you're running, you're familiar with the applications that have been written in-house, you know that the server that runs that database has some type of weird memory leak, and every 3 weeks we have to reboot it. You know that the cable that's on the 5th floor connected to the laser printer is one that has always been a little dodgy, but it's too expensive to run a new cable. So every few months you go down there and you replace the connector at the end of the cable. You know, these are things, sort of the institutional knowledge that you accumulate over time. And if you're someone who walks in the door and you sort of know the answer to everything, I would argue that maybe you're in the wrong job. If you are in a position, though, when you walk in the door, that you're learning every day, there seems to be a challenge of things you don't know about, that's normal in IT. That is the normal work during the day. That is your normal process. It seems like you're constantly researching. It seems like you're constantly Googling for these manuals. It seems like you are constantly trying to get another bit of knowledge crammed into your noggin. That's normal IT. That's how we work. welcome. Good to have you here. That is something that you just sort of get familiar with through the years. And of course, you learn and gather information as you go. So 5 years into your IT degree, you can look back at where you were 5 years ago, and you already know all that content from 5 years ago. You just keep building on it and building on it and building on it as you go. So having a feeling like you don't know everything is actually pretty normal. And from the perspective of someone who's getting a master's degree in IT security, you're already sort of punching above your weight class right there. You are already learning things that most people they really do start on the help desk. Then they move into maybe PC administration. Then they do some server admin. Then they maybe do some networking. And then only after that point do they finally move into security. Because quite honestly, IT security requires you to have a very solid foundation in all of those other operating systems and networking technologies. You really do need that. There are very few entry-level security positions relative to the rest of IT. Because security is not one where you start in. Security is an area where you move up into. Generally speaking, I'm speaking very broadly here. Now, are there some entry-level security positions out in the world? There are. In fact, if you go to a large geographical area, you're in a big city, you're in a DC, you're in an Atlanta, you're in a Dallas, you're in an LA, you're in a Chicago, those places generally have very large companies headquartered there. And those very large companies tend to have a technical support center or operations center. They might also have a network operations center. They might also have a security operations center. These are separate help desks or areas of the company that manage the help desk side, they manage the networking side, and they manage the security side. And in all of those, there will be entry-level positions. But all of those entry-level positions tend to be service desk type positions. You're taking phone calls, you're triaging, you're figuring out what problem is happening, and then you're assigning that problem to the best person to solve that issue. So I think when you get into those scenarios, you'll find that you grow into the role. And then as soon as you grow into the role, you better be jumping into a next role above that. And that's really how we move up in IT. We tend to start low in these entry-level positions, but then we move up very quickly. That's one of the things I think people don't consider. I think most people think you get a help desk position, well, that's your job now. And you're going to be in help desk the rest of your life. It doesn't work that way. You'll be in help desk for 9 months, for a year and a half, for a relatively short period of time, because you're going to learn everything you need to know. You're going to learn the people that work in the organization. You're going to become familiar with the processes and procedures, with the change control, with where the systems are, with where the systems go down all the time, all of those things that begin happening. And then once you know all of that, you're now going to be more valuable working for the desktop team. You're now going to be more valuable working for the networking team, for the database team, for the data center team, for someone else in the organization, and you will move out of the help desk. Your employer already knows this, by the way. They know the help desk is there to bring people in, make them familiar and acclimate them with the organization. And then once they become technically knowledgeable, we move them into a role where they can grow even further. That's the normal part of IT. In fact, many people often speak of IT as having the 3-year rule. This is how employees tend to speak about this, is you don't tend to stay in a job more than 3 years. You tend to move up or out to a different organization in that 3-year period. Sometimes it's less than 3 years. Sometimes it's a little more than 3 years. My last position when I worked for another company, I stayed 7 years. But there were some jobs where I stayed 9 months. My first job as field service technician, right out of college, I stayed in that position 9 months, and then I upgraded into a corporate help desk. How's that? I didn't start in a corporate help desk. I started below the corporate help desk, and I upgraded to the corporate help desk. But from there, I upgraded to the desktop support team. From there, I upgraded to the server support team. From there, I did networking in the organization. From there, I went to manufacturers, started working for the big manufacturers out of Silicon Valley as a systems engineer. So you will find there's a path for you. We don't know what that path is yet. We don't know what your interests are. We don't know what's happening in the world around you. But it's important that you follow that path, that you have a set of goals that will start you in one place and simply lead you through the rest of them. So even though you feel like you don't know how to do anything but solve PC problems, I'll bet in the things that you've learned, you've done a bit of server operations, you've worked with server operating systems, you've done some networking, you're building the foundation you need now to be able to get a job doing something in security. So don't be concerned also if you get out of college, you've got your master's degree, and you're not able to get an IT security job right out of the gate. That's okay. You're going to get into IT security eventually. You will eventually wind your way around. You'll do tons of PC work and server work and networking work, and you will eventually move into a security role. It is, in my mind, it's sort of eventual for most people in IT if that's something that you would like to do. You will not be stuck at a help desk. You will not be put in a position, although put me wherever you want. As long as you're paying me, I'll figure out the best way to handle this. And that's sort of happened in my career as well. You never know what you're going to run into. So hopefully that's given you some perspective. Let's do some more questions that have come in. Again, you can submit those questions by visiting professormesser.com/QA and lock in what those happen to be. Since we just talked about that master's degree in IT, let's take this question from Jake, who says, I'm studying for computer science. Does it cover most of the topics like A+, Security Plus, and Network Plus, or is it something different? I think Jake suspects there could be a difference between computer science and IT, and Jake, you would be correct. There is a difference between computer science and IT. There's a big difference between computer science and IT. They tend to be very different worlds. I used to have a presentation available here. I don't know that it's immediately accessible at my fingertips, but it's a presentation I created that talks about being able to get a job in IT with no experience. And this is what a lot of people are running into if you're trying to get that first job in IT. How do you get that first job? You've never had a job working professionally in IT. So how does this work? So one of the first things I show in that presentation is this. That really describes these two areas of technology. When you go to a university or college, you will find that practically every university or college out there has a degree or a series of degrees based around computer science. Interestingly enough, if you look at those same universities and colleges, very, very few of them have anything relating to information technology. Some of them might have an information technology degree that they have, but when you start reading into it, there's very little IT. It's mostly just computer science with a little IT thrown in. I don't know why universities don't feel that information technology is worthwhile to them, or why they somehow dismiss it as being not university material, because we are certainly as integrated and important to an organization as the side that's computer science. So what's the difference between these two? Why do we break them out this way? Why in this Venn diagram do we have information technology on one side, computer science on the other side, and practically no type of gap between them? Very little overlap between those two sides. Well, the reason is that they're two different things. They're two completely different worlds of technology. Computer science focuses, and I'm speaking very broadly here, so I look forward to your cards and letters. Computer science speaks very broadly to how you can create hardware and applications. It is about the coding process. It's about programming. It's about application development. It's about building applications in a programming language. It's about learning C. It's about learning Java. It's about learning all of these coding programming languages that you always hear about. But anytime that you need to build an app, someone on the computer science side is building the app. Anytime you need to build a web-based application, build a mobile-based application, do some bug fixes to an application, that's computer science. If you need to build hardware that has its own firmware, that has a hardware component to it, that's computer science. That's not IT. On the IT side, we're focused on making whatever they've built work properly, Make sure that it's accessible. Make sure that it's networkable. Make sure that it is uptime and availability is available for that application. Make sure that it is secure. Make sure that your data is available and secure. Make sure that the VPN access to that application is working properly. Make sure that the system running that application is fault tolerant, has RAID configured in it, that it is, whenever there's an outage, that we can fix that outage and get it up and running. That's IT. So if you're working with an operating system, troubleshooting operating systems, networks, you're working at the packet level, or you're securing any of the data that's going across any of those systems, that's information technology. So that's where I put those two categories. So if you go to college and you get a degree in computer science, you've probably gone to a number of classes on programming, on C++, on building an app, on compiling this and compiling that. If you're compiling something, you're computer science. That's pretty much how it works, generally speaking. The IT side is very different. We don't do application development. We don't use these programming languages to build a mobile app or to build a web-based app. We don't do that. Instead, we focus on keeping everything running, uptime, availability, and safe. That's what we're focused on the IT side. Now, might you do some scripting? Might you do some, I dare say, use the word coding. I really prefer the term scripting because it does describe much better what you're doing. Building out Python scripts, PowerShell scripts, Perl scripts, any other type of scripting or automation that you can do. We certainly do a ton of that in IT. I'm not saying that you'll never work with any of those languages, because you might, to be able to automate some type of process, but you're not building an application. You're not working with C++. You're not compiling anything. You don't have to worry about those types of things. You're scripting. And automation has been in IT for as long as IT has been around. So this is nothing new. It seems that a lot of the focus and interest in scripting has suddenly appeared in the last few years. But the reality is we've been doing this since there's been computers. This is nothing new. I think they just realized we were doing it. Like, hey, you can really make things automated and quick and efficient by learning some of these scripting languages. That's correct. Yes, you can. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. We've been doing this for a while, but it's nice of you to join us. I'm glad when management steps into the room so they can see that things are actually working that way. That's really what it comes down to. So I think that the idea, and this is the challenge, of course, is so if you go to college and you want to be in the world of technology, what options do you really have? You don't have a lot. You have computer science. If you're interested in IT, a computer science degree would at least get the interest of the IT team. But what you don't want to do is go down the road, if you're interested in IT, what you don't want to do is go down the road of learning all these programming languages and then show up wanting a degree in wanting a job in IT and saying, but I know C++ and I can write applications in Java and I've written these mobile apps. Well, that doesn't help us. We don't do that here. We don't do that in IT. Tell me what you know about Microsoft Windows. Tell me what you know about Windows Server. Tell me what you know about Linux. Tell me what you know about networking. Tell me what you know about security and safety and keeping this data secure. Tell me what you know about encryption. You know, some of those do overlap. Some of that knowledge does overlap. So it's not a waste of time, but it absolutely can help you by going over to the IT side and maybe getting some of these certifications. This is one of the reasons I think these certifications are so valuable, because the universities aren't teaching it. They're not interested. They've even said directly that it's kind of beneath them. They don't feel that something that's trainable is something that they should be doing. They feel that that's very that's not very university-like. That's not very university-ish. So they just don't do it. They have no interest in doing it. And ironically, the IT part of technology, one of the biggest ones you're going to find. You know, the tens of billions of dollars in that particular industry. It's just remarkable that they do that. So that's why I tell people you may need both, just because there is not an option. When my kids were interested in getting into IT, I looked around for schools that actually taught IT skills. Is there a bachelor's degree that focuses on these IT technologies? What about learning virtualization? What about learning cloud technologies? What about learning operating systems? What about the networking side of things? Those are important skills. And if you're not going to get them at a traditional school, can we find them somewhere else? And it turns out there are schools out there that are starting to come around to that line of thinking. So don't worry that you're studying for computer science, but you will find, as you suggested here, the topics of A+, Security+, and Network+ are completely different than what you'll find on the computer science side. So that's why I tell you, you might want both. You might want that computer science degree so that you can show someone, I have a 4-year degree, because 4-year degrees are valuable. But you might also want to get industry certifications to fill in those gaps, because industry certifications are also valuable, but they don't replace each other. You can't say, well, I didn't go get a degree, but I got a bunch of certs, and that's the same thing. Nope, it is not. If it's not a degree, it's not a degree. If it's not a certification, it's not a certification. Those are two different credentials that address two different things. So it's good. I think that's a good approach to it. And hopefully that's given you some ideas about some of the things you can do with technology and how it works. Whenever I start worrying about, is this something I need to know, just go see if there's an IT certification for it. That's what I do. And that's okay. That's obviously something important because they're willing to certify people on that particular topic. Let's get other questions in here. Along those same lines, here's one where people said, wait, you don't have to know programming, but what about DevOps? What about that? Okay, I would love for it someday. What I hope, at night, I close my eyes and I hope and I say, would someday somebody define what DevOps is? That would be great, because nobody really has. Nobody's done it consistently. There's lots of definitions of DevOps out there. They're all different. They're all very different. DevOps was a great idea that our managers came up with. So already, there's a flaw. And they said, we're spending a lot of time hiring programmers, and we're spending a lot of time hiring IT people. Let's just hire one person, and they'll be both a programmer and an IT person. Genius. That's brilliant. Except they didn't take into account that you can take a lifetime of knowledge to put into programming and a lifetime of knowledge and put into IT. What they effectively have done is say, can we create a much worse situation than we already have? Let's take skills that would require at least 2 people and put that into one person. Now, statistically, you can already figure out that creates some significant downsides, because the DevOps person is not going to have the full breadth of knowledge that an IT person would have. A DevOps person is not going to have the full breadth of knowledge that a computer science or programming person would have. So instead, you're getting sort of this something in the middle. Now, what this has tended to morph into, that was sort of where we started. And then we did it, and people said, wow, that didn't go well. How can we turn this into something positive? And they decided, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll really turn DevOps into a scripting and automation person. And that's what it has turned into in our industries, is that someone who's really good with scripting. That's what DevOps is now. It was really designed to optimize the cloud-based infrastructures that companies were spending a lot of money on and create a way that we could really orchestrate, automate what we're doing with our cloud-based technologies. And the people that are good at doing that are very good at doing this. It is a skill set that is people still want. They want that automation. They see value in it. They think there's a lot of cost savings that can come from that. But what they've really figured out is that we need people who are really good at scripting to be able to run the cloud, because the cloud is mostly code. It's mostly scripting. It's mostly systems that aren't real. It's not physical. And so there's even more of an emphasis in how can we make the cloud dance? How can we control it? How can we really be the person pulling the strings on these cloud-based systems so that it automatically expands itself when things get busy. So it automatically tears down those extra services when things slow down. So that certain times of the year when things get really busy, it builds itself out in automated ways so that we don't have to do it ourselves, so that we don't have to be there pushing buttons. It just does it. That's what DevOps is really focused on, is that level of orchestration. And it's one that it never realized the original grandiose idea of having programmers manage systems. Because if you have ever been at a company where a programmer has managed a system, it has always been a disaster, because programmers are spending their life learning these object-oriented programming languages. And in fact, it takes that level of commitment to be anywhere good at being able to write those languages. You can't then now spend time trying to learn the intricacies of Windows Server or learning how Linux operates under the surface. Now you're taking time away from being a good programmer. So you can either be a bad programmer and a bad IT person, or you can really put somebody into the position who's just really good at scripting, which is its own set of skills, quite honestly. So that's what about DevOps. It's not computer science. It's more IT. In fact, you really need to keep the computer science people out of the IT side, because they have a different set of goals and objectives. They're trying to write code. They're trying to write it as fast as possible, and they're trying to push it into production. That's their goal. The faster they can get into production, the better off we're going to be. The IT folks are like, hold on. Where are the installation instructions for this software that we're installing? And then once it's here, how do we upgrade it? How do we maintain it? How do we expand on it? How do we deploy more of these? Do they talk to each other? How do we handle issues with troubleshooting this application? You know, there's the IT side of things you have to consider. The development side, these computer science folks are like, not our job. You're IT. You figure it out. We're writing code. So that's the problem, is that we're really approaching this from two different perspectives. So you really have to approach it that way. You have to think about it that way, as they are really two different worlds, because they are. As much as we want to cram them together, and I agree, think of the money we could save if we could get rid of both sides and just have one single person. That would be great. There's a whole physics problem there that's not ever going to happen, though, unfortunately. Just the way things work. There's too much to know. There's way too much to know. You're never going to know everything on either side of those. Okay. Other types of questions that have come in. How are we on time? We're not good on time. I need to keep going here. Get more questions in. Along those same lines, since it came up, Tom, whose name's also Tom, says, do you consider that that bundle of CompTIA certs are worth more than a computer science degree? No. No, nothing here is comparable to each other. These are two different things. The computer science degree stands on its own. The certifications stand on their own. They both bring value in different ways to different people. And in some cases, some of these may be considered more valuable than the other, depending on what employer you're talking to. But take, for example, someone who wants to be in IT. The computer science degree doesn't help you very much if it was a pure CS degree. If it was purely computer science, you can walk in the room and say, I know C++, I know Java, I can write a mobile app. Well, that's great. We don't do that here. What else you got? I got an A+. Oh, good. We were looking for somebody with an A+. Great. Let's talk. You know, that's how it works. But if you're going into a job where you're doing software development, you aren't going to walk in and say, hey, I've got my Network+. How about that? Like, I don't know what that is. You know, we write code here. Do you write code? Yeah, C++. Yes, come on in. Write your C code over here. So that's it. That's the whole part of this is the breakdown of those. So CompTIA certs have a value to a hiring manager. A 4-year degree has value to a hiring manager, but they are different types of value. They approach things in different ways. They stand alone in what we're using them for. So that's why I tell people, you can't replace a degree by getting a bunch of certs. You can't replace certs by getting a degree. It doesn't work that way. They are two different credentials, and they bring different capabilities to the table, especially when you're trying to get a job. Imagine if everybody who walked in the job says, everybody on this job who's applying has a computer science degree. Well, then you're exactly where you started. But what if you had other certifications that went along with that? You got your A+, you got your Network+, you got Security+, you got an Azure cert, you got a Amazon Web Services, you got a Cisco, you got whatever it is. You're bringing more to the table. As long as it applies and as long as it is applicable to the position you are applying for. You don't want to show it with 10 certs. That would be bad. But you do want to show it with certifications that match what the employer is expecting of you. And that should be in the job description. You should know that before you even walk in the door. And then you have a story to be able to work through that. And in fact, I love how these are just sort of flowing together. Mac has even commented, I'm new in the IT job market after graduating from college recently. Congratulations, Mac. A lot of job postings require or prefer a certification on top of an education. Imagine you've worked 4 years, you've enjoyed your time in college, but some of these classes were difficult. You had to go through all these classes in college to get your 4-year degree that had nothing to do with your degree. How do I know that? Because everybody does. It is the biggest scam in the world. Why am I getting a business degree and I'm taking calculus? That doesn't make sense. Why am I taking a computer science degree and I have to take physics? I don't know. The college will tell you it makes you a more rounded individual. You're more educated. No, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with any of that. You're just gatekeeping. You're just wanting more money. That's 3 more credit hours that you weren't getting. Because I would never take physics because I'm not going into physics. I'm a programmer. But that's the way they think. Well, in your programming someday, you may be programming something that requires some type of knowledge in physics. Therefore, you should take 2 physics classes. That's a tough reach. That is a difficult argument. Thank you, Mr. College. What I really think is you wanted 6 more credit hours out of me. So there you go. That's how those things worked. So yes, as I just mentioned, Mac is absolutely correct. Employers will not only prefer that you have a 4-year degree or some type of formal education, they will also expect you to have some industry certifications, especially if you're getting into an IT job. Now, computer science doesn't have these types of certifications. You may have noticed this. There's no certification for, I've got the C++ cert. I've got the Java cert. I've got the, pick your favorite programming language and stick it in there. They don't have those certifications because you have actual code that you can show. Well, I wrote an application. Here's the application I wrote. Here's the code you can look through. They already have sort of a built-in check for knowledge on the computer science side. We don't have that in IT. Well, actually, we do, except it's certifications. So having a knowledge of A+ means you have a baseline knowledge of operating systems, hardware, security, networking, and everything else that's in there. Same thing for Network+, same thing for Security+. You've got a baseline that they now know you have a certain level that you had to meet to pass that particular exam. It doesn't mean you're an expert in those. Certifications has never even stated ever that once you get your cert, you are somehow have an inherent expertise in everything hardware and operating system or in everything networking. That's not how certifications work. And everyone knows this, by the way. So I think a lot of people will create these straw mans about why certification's good or are not good. Ultimately, the value of a certification is what you do with it. And if there is a hiring manager who has written on the job posting, prefers someone with an A+, that's why you have your A+, because you go to the top of the line. You have a much better chance of being called in on a face-to-face interview and a much better chance of getting the job if you have the credentials that they're looking for. Now, if nobody was asking for an A+, if nobody was asking for Network+, or nobody was asking for Security+, I would be very sad because I'd have to find something else to do in my life. But we would have an idea. We would know walking in the door, okay, they don't need that level of knowledge. They don't want that level of knowledge. They just want what's listed in job posting, which is fine too. That's the idea of doing this, is that they prefer that information because, by the way, they know, and Mac, this is why they're doing it. You got a 4-year degree. in college, in your university, wherever you went, you got that degree, you got that formal education. The employers know that this is the weird part. They know the schools aren't teaching it. They know the schools aren't teaching Windows. They know the schools aren't teaching networking. They know the schools aren't teaching cloud. They know the schools aren't teaching security. They know they're not. And because of that, they're saying, it's great you got your degree. We're going to need some certs too, just to see if you've got some hands-on here. Because we checked out that school and you know C++. That doesn't help us. We need this. Or maybe they looked at the IT degree from that school. I did this recently when one of my kids was interested in getting into IT. I said, well, let's look at the state colleges. And I found a state college that was at least had an IT degree, and it did have physics listed in the things you had to take. It's another example of how they are either, people want to say the schools are clueless as to what people need. No. They're not clueless. They know exactly what people need. They just aren't interested in giving it to you. And they can make more money and more revenue if you end up taking physics. That's why they do it. I mean, follow the money. There's no other reason. I don't think that's too far out of the scope of crazy. That's not crazy at all. That's exactly what they're doing. In fact, ask anyone who's been to college, who's had a 4-year degree, anyone who has gone through a 4-year program at any school in the United States, probably Canada too, and ask them, did you have to take any courses in the course of your 4-year degree, maybe even in the last 2 years, where it was way outside the scope of what you needed to know? And they'll tell you, oh yeah, absolutely. Every single person you run into has that. This is just sort of a normal thing that colleges do. And they wrap it up in that weirdness of, no, it makes you a better, well-rounded person. Really? Because it took physics? Really? There's no other way I could have been well-rounded? So that's ridiculous. The first 2 years are a little different. You know, you're taking those English courses, literature. That does make you a better person. You are a little more well-rounded. You have a little more knowledge in economics and history, and those are good things. Those are interesting things. And they can help provide a foundation moving forward. It's when you get into those last 2 years and they start throwing those crazy classes at you, that's just what you run into. So that's why they say that they really do want to see that you have both this practical knowledge and this 4-year degree, because a 4-year degree means you're trainable. A 4-year degree means that you stick with a particular goal over an extended period of time. A 4-year degree means that we could even teach you other things. So there's some, ultimately, maybe even parts of that 4-year degree also taught you something practical too. And it will. Just not everything will be practical. But there will be parts of your 4-year degree that are indeed practical. My degree was in business management, was not a technical degree. And I took courses in calculus. I took a calculus course. I took it twice. Took the calculus course twice. But I took calculus in a business degree. Guess how many business people use calculus? Donut, baby. Zero. Nada. Nothing. Nobody uses calculus in business. So this is just one of those things. You will get used to this as you see more and more of this. It's just almost overwhelming sometimes with the nonsense we have to go through just to get that 4-year degree, because they know you want that 4-year degree. They know you want that piece of paper, and they'll put up the barriers, those barriers made of money, and you have to run through those barriers just to get that degree. So that's one of those situations. Albina has a good question. I think this is one where we'll fill in the blanks as we go through this. Is Linux a good part to follow in IT? I think you could even take Linux and put anything in there. This Linux, first, let me answer the question. Linux is a great path to follow in IT. Linux is a great operating system you should know. If you know everything there is to know about Linux, you can get a job anywhere, because every company in the world is using Linux to some degree. Some using it more than others, but it's a very valuable and well-integrated operating system that you will find in every single company you will ever run into. The challenge, though, is that maybe you don't like Linux. Maybe you like Windows. So erase Linux here, put Windows. Is Windows a good path to follow in IT? It is. Absolutely. Learn everything you can about Windows. Every company in the world's using Windows. If you know everything there is to know about Windows, you'll be able to get a job anywhere. Now let's put networking in there. Is networking a good path to follow in IT? So it turns out every organization has a network. And the more you know about networking, the more you'll be able to solve application issues, the more you'll be able to solve communication problems, the more you'll know about the way these things are operating under the surface. You'll have a better understanding of how to secure them. Yes, networking is a good path to follow in IT. So the point to this question and the point to my answers to this question is that IT is huge. There are areas of study within IT that you could spend your entire career in, and you still would not know everything there is to know. This would include Windows, Linux, networking, security, databases, cloud, email, data centers. We can just keep going in this list. So what's nice about this, and one of the things I love about IT, is that you choose what you want to do because there are jobs available in every single one of those areas. And if you become at least somewhat knowledgeable in those particular areas, there's a job for you. And you'll continue to learn as you get into that position. You'll continue to grow. But what's interesting in IT, I find, is that you often move between these different areas. I've already mentioned today that my path started as a field service technician. I moved into a corporate help desk. And from there, I learned everything I could learn about Windows on the desktop, how to deploy it remotely, how to automate the deployments, how to back it up, how to troubleshoot it, how to manage it. Then I moved into networking. Since I was installing Windows across the network, I had to optimize a lot of things in the way the network operated. And in the process of doing that, learned a lot about the networks. And that got me into the networking world of things. So I think that's where we focus or try to focus our efforts, is on those areas, but it tends to move you. It's almost like you're in a stream. You're in the IT river, and that river is sort of taking you down, and it's a windy, windy river. There are things you can't even see around the corner yet, but you're in the river now, and it's the river where you're working with desktops. And then the river's kind of winding around into the networking side. You're thinking, that's interesting. Let's do something with networking. And then all of a sudden, you come around the corner, whoa, there's a cloud. Let's learn about the cloud, or whatever the next big thing is going to be. You know, maybe we turn the corner and it's something completely different, a new technology we didn't even know about, we couldn't have even dreamed of, and now this new technology is rolling out everywhere we look. This happens all the time. So as soon as you get knowledgeable in one area, the river tends to take you into another area. Now, what's fortunate is that you're able to move into a different area. You can get your paddle, and you can paddle a little bit over to the left, you can paddle a little bit over to the right, and you can adjust where you happen to be going along that river. So you also have the ability to lead yourself into those areas. But the important thing to know about this is that you will never stay in these roles your entire career. It'd be unusual, for example, to learn about Linux, learn everything there is to know about Linux, and then you do that for the next 20 years. It's not going to happen. You will most likely be learning other things. Maybe you want to move into management. Who wants that? Sometimes they do. Maybe you want to be a technician for one of the big companies in the Valley. You want to go work for Google or Facebook, one of those big ones. You can go do it. It's out there. Maybe you want to move to a different country and experience another culture. There's IT around the world. You can do that. So you've got a lot of options available. You just need to take those options. You just need to put those options right in front of you and then decide what you want to do, make a path, create a strategy for getting to that goal, and you can do that. And I think IT is one of those parts of technology that more than any other line of work, I think, IT enables you to do that. And that's why I tell people all the time, this is the best job in the world, because you get to decide what you want to do. You can do as much or as little as you would like. You can travel as much or as little as you would like. You can make as much money or as little money as you would like. You get to decide in IT. There is no upper level. There is no top where you can't go any further. I thought there was, and then we just keep going. And then you go some more. I'm constantly surprised in this industry and being able to make that happen. So that's what I tell people too, is you get to decide. You get to make that path and figure out. So is Linux good to follow in IT? Absolutely. But pick whatever you want to do. Pick what jobs are open in your area. Pick the technologies that interest you the most. See if there's a connection between those two. Now set a strategy for going to get those jobs. And if you don't get the one you want immediately, that's okay. You got your foot in the door. And now you can start working towards the things that interest you. Employers notice this, by the way. As soon as you get into a role and suddenly the networking piece is really interesting, you start spending a lot of time optimizing things on the networking side, trust me, the people around you notice this. They'll go, maybe we should get you doing more network stuff. You're really good at that. Let's put you over on the network side. Okay. Gosh, I wasn't even ready for that. Here we go. Let's do that. That's a great position to be in. And you can do that in IT very, very easily. That's just the way we work. That's the normal way to make this happen. Okay, let's keep going and see if we can understand more. I know we're past the top of the hour, but I want to get in at least one more question and make this happen. This is one that's more of a troubleshooting or managing your renewals. So let's talk about this. This is from Mac, who says at some point you wanted to take another certification after completing the A+, for example, the Network+. Will completing the Network+ certification renew the A+ as well? Well, the quick answer is yes, it does. But the longer answer is that there are many different ways to renew your certification. So I'm going to type in CompTIA renewal into my favorite search engine, and it's going to bring up a number of different options for the CompTIA website. And if you notice on the CompTIA website at the very top, there is a link for continuing education. So let's have a look at the continuing education link on the CompTIA website. There it is. So this gives you different ways to renew. Why do you need to renew? Because your certification is going to expire. Learn about the renewal process. Here's the one you probably want to go to. Choose your renewal path. Your renewal path is going to have a lot of different things available. You can renew with a single activity. That's the one that you just mentioned. Getting a Network+ certification renews your A+. So let's learn more about that one. Well, we need some cookies on this site, don't we? Let's compare renewal options. Nope. CertMaster CE, a popular option, but that's not what we're going to talk about either. Higher level CompTIA certifications. That's what you were discussing in the question that you posed. And CompTIA puts this great little chart on their website. So this is the sort of the low to high of the CompTIA certification. This is the CompTIA pyramid. I don't know what they call it. That's what I'm calling it. So for example, A+ is at the bottom. CASP is at the very top, which is the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner. But you were talking specifically about the Network+. Now, if you click on that, it tells you that if you pass your Network+, it fully renews the A+. So there you go. You've just renewed. If you have an A+ and you take the Network+, boom, 3-year renewal right away. Let's even go to Security+. Notice that if you passed your Security+, it would renew Network+ and A+, both of those at the same time. So when you renew your certification, you only have to renew your highest level cert to have the lower level certs renewed. Now, don't think that this pyramid, or whatever I called it, represents what's higher and lower, because it doesn't. Let me give you an example. Linux Plus is just above Security Plus. So in my mind, Linux Plus must renew Security Plus, Network Plus, and A+. And if we look at it, it does not. It only renews A+. So make sure you go into this list and really have a look at what gets renewed, or if this certification even renews anything. There are some certifications that do not renew or even provide any CEUs for anything that you're doing. So that's an important consideration if you're planning to renew, that you pick the right thing to renew. And your specific example, Mac, of Network Plus renewing the A Plus is true, but it doesn't work that way with every cert and every combination. Make sure you check the CompTIA website to know exactly what the right option is for the things that you are trying to renew. You don't want to choose the wrong cert, take it and pass it, and then realize, oh, wait, that doesn't renew what I already have. That'd be disappointing. Always check the details. And quite honestly, there are other options there for renewal. You might want to look at CertMaster CE. You might want to take a third-party certification. You might want to collect CEUs. There's lots of other things you can do. All of those are documented on the CompTIA website. Other questions along these lines. Let's keep going with this list. Other things that people are asking about, there's a lot of questions coming in about performance-based questions, what types of things are on the performance-based questions. I think a lot of people worry about performance-based questions because they're just unknown. It's the fear of the unknown that we're dealing with. What I think you should focus on with performance-based questions is these are the same type of questions you're being asked in a multiple choice form. They're just asking you in a different way. These are not questions about topics you've never heard of before. They're not trying to throw you a curveball. They're giving you a very straightforward question and asking you for that answer. It's just not multiple choice. That's the only difference. And again, if you know the topics from the exam objectives, all of the performance-based questions are covering topics that are in your list of exam objectives. So they're not even going outside the scope of what you already know. Again, if you know what's on the exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam. And if you know what's on the exam objectives, you'll be able to answer the questions that are in the performance-based questions. That's all you have to worry about. Don't overthink the performance-based questions that they are complex or they're involved or it's going to take 30 minutes. It's not. It's a relatively straightforward process. It's very easy to understand what you expect. It is really the focus on knowing the content, know the objectives. If you know the objectives, you'll run through the performance-based questions with no problem. I mean, I gave you a number of study groups ago. There was another question about 568A and 568B, except it was a performance-based question. Today, I asked you a 568A and 568B question that was multiple choice. But that multiple choice question could have been a performance-based question if I had arranged it a little bit differently. So that's what I say when I say don't worry about the performance-based questions. You, of course, do have to worry about them, but I'm saying they're not going to be something unexpected. It's not going to be a topic you've never heard of before. It's going to be things you know, and you're going to do fine in answering questions if you know those particular things. That is the goal. Let's get one more question in. This is more of a career question. I think it's worth mentioning. Ty asks, when I pass my A+, I want to get a remote job. Is that possible? Yes, but increasingly not. Obviously, in 2020, yes, 100%, you're getting a remote job because we all have remote jobs. Everybody was working remotely. Everybody was at home. Wasn't that great? We could wake up in the morning, roll into work, which was in the other room. We do our work. We're focused. There's not a lot of things distracting us. We can communicate with others across our Zoom or FaceTime or just on the phone, get what we needed to get done, and what our job was expecting of us, we were able to complete it. And then we didn't have a commute home. We just turned off the computer and walked into the other room and made dinner. That was so great. However, these companies we work for have these enormous leases of buildings that all went to a building to do our jobs. And in some ways, some jobs are better if everybody's in the same room. I worked for a startup at one point, and there was a requirement from the development team that all of the developers were in-house. They were in the room. They were not remote. They specifically were not remote because the person leading the developers felt we needed to collaborate with each other. We were putting together a very complex and new set of technologies, And everybody needed the ability to turn around and say, what do you think of that? Or how did you do this piece of it? Or how can I focus on this other side of things? And to get instant feedback of whoever's in the room and what they were doing. And for better or worse, whether you agree or not, that management team felt that that was a secret sauce for them. They felt that that was a competitive advantage over what other companies were doing. And I have to agree, having seen it, they weren't necessarily wrong along those lines. So there are places and times when being in person in a room, collaborating together is better than being remote. I've also worked jobs where you are expected to come into a desk, you put on your headset, and you take calls from other people that are in other cities, and you are solving their problems with the console that's on your computer in front of you. And at the end of the day, you take your headset off and you go home. And you don't even talk to the other people in the building, except maybe when you got up to get some water or some coffee. And in those particular positions, maybe remote would be better. But the problem is that you now have these companies that have made significant investments in having you in a chair in a different building, and they feel like they're not getting their money's worth if you stay at home. And so we have this economic pull of companies that weren't able to adjust. They didn't make change. They didn't change the way they worked during our times when we were remote. So we can't expect them to change that way now that we're not remote. There are jobs still out there that are fully remote. There are a very much decreasing number of them. I feel like we're getting back to where we started. There were remote jobs prior to 2020. There were people I worked with that all worked remotely, especially for large service providers like the Sprints of the world, the AT&Ts of the world, the T-Mobiles of the world. There are very, very smart people working for those organizations that are dealing with international wide area network issues that they don't need to be in an office. It's a waste of time for them to be in the office. They need to be on the phone working in front of their computer, wherever that computer happens to be. And before we were all sent home, they already had a remote job. But there weren't a lot of those. There were relatively few of those in the IT industry. And I feel like we're sort of getting back to that we're not in that same place, that we're kind of migrating back to a very rare remote job. And whether that's good or bad is up to somebody else to figure out. But there are certainly positions out there today that are remote positions that will continue to be remote positions for the foreseeable future. The problem is that many of these companies want people in the room. They want to feel that you can collaborate with the other technical people around you. And whether that's right or wrong, well, that's not up to me. That's their decision to make. And that's your decision to make if you're in that particular role, whether that fits what you want to be able to do. I mentioned earlier, IT is one of these jobs where you get to decide whether the position you're in is right for you or not. And there are a lot of positions out there. Unfortunately, the economics of the world right now don't give us as many options as we might have when the economy is good. So this may be a situation where we get to sit around for a little while, do our jobs, come into the office, and then as the economy gets better again, because these things are cyclical, the economy will get better again, that we will finally decide, let's look around for a job that's remote. Maybe there's a few more of those out here right now, and there's a better chance of me getting into one of those positions. So you may want to start working on that strategy. I mentioned earlier, you have to pick where you want to be, and then you have to create a strategy on how you get to that point. Well, for this one, I want to be in a remote job. How the job is out here. I've seen a number of positions available. Maybe go look at AT&T and T-Mobile and some of these big companies out there and see what positions they have and how many of them are remote. Start doing some intel, start doing some recon, and figure out where those positions are and where you want to live, and see if you can find a match. And if you do, now start figuring out what do they want that person to be able to do. And it may be even a best case. One of the things that wouldn't be outside the scope is once you found a job with one of those companies that is remote, and you think, I'd love to have a job like that, go find somebody who's in that job now and go send them a note on LinkedIn and say, I think there's a position out here that I would be very interested in that you have. There's other positions in your company that are remote. How do you plan to get a job remotely? What things should I be working on now to be able to get to this point of where you are? And see if they can give you some feedback. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But it gives you an option at least to work towards, to have that strategy to be able to get the job you like. Maybe it's not a remote job. Maybe you want a job where you travel all the time. Maybe you want a job where you don't travel. Maybe you want a job that's 50% travel. You get to decide. Maybe you want a position where you're working out of the Northeast of the United States. Maybe you like being in the South. Maybe you like the East Coast or the West Coast. You get to decide. The jobs are out there. You just have to find them and then create a strategy on how you can get those positions. You have to go after them. They're not going to find you. They're not going to fall in your lap. You're not going to wake up and think, maybe I'll get a job offer today. You have to go out and get it. And the best way to do that is to find out what's required for that position and then go after those requirements. Become an expert in everything that's out there along those particular jobs. That's the beauty of IT. That's one of the huge advantages you have in information technology. And if you're not taking advantage of that, you're missing out on one of the huge benefits we have of being very knowledgeable in technology. Everybody needs somebody smart who's technical. You just have to find the right job for you, the right positions. I am lucky enough that I was able to find, like, half the jobs in my career were exactly what I was looking for. Half the jobs in my career weren't. But I was smart enough to only stay in those bad jobs for a short period of time and then rebound into something I was really looking for. And it turns out worked very, very well for me. So they all can't be winners, people. We have to, you get smarter as you go along. You get much more discerning and much more aware of the red flags as you go along in this industry. You get better at it as you go along. I never did, but maybe you will. Maybe you'll be better than I was. But eventually I found what I think was the best possible job for me. That last job I had working as a systems engineer in cybersecurity was the peak for me. That was the ultimate for me. And I really enjoyed doing that. When I do that job again immediately, it was so much fun being able to do it. Right now, I like doing this. So I'm gonna stick with this for the time being. This is the best job I've ever had. It was one that is perfect for what I like to do. So I'm just going to keep doing this one for the time being. We'll worry about all of those other things later. I think that's probably the best place to stop at. I've gone over quite a bit on this one, but I think that's okay. You understand, don't you? This is one where there's always something interesting going on, and we are so glad that you're able to spend this time with us. This was our Core 1 study group. Remember, we have a Core 2 study group that we have 2 days from now on Thursday. If you're here live here on Tuesday, we'd love for you to be live on Thursday as well. Come on back for that. You'll find it on our calendar or whenever you'd like to know when our next live event is going to be. Simply go to the Professor Messer website. There's a calendar link right at the top. And we want to thank you for being here too. There's really a very bad study group if I ask a lot of questions and get no answers. So I am so grateful that you're able to spend time with us and go through these. And thank you also for the questions that you give in the second hour. We have a lot of fun with those too. And you always have such insightful and interesting questions that we can talk about. It's so appreciated. So thank you so much. This is our last A+ study group of the year, but we're not done. We're just sliding right into 2024. If you want to show up in January, we've got plenty more study groups to go. I'll just keep making them. We'll keep doing them until you're just sick of me. And then I'll still keep doing them. So you're not going to get rid of me quite that easy. Thank you so much for being here. And we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.